A young and very beautiful, sad widow with a black scarf on her head was standing near the grave. There were many flowers, ceremonial wreaths, and a wooden cross with a portrait. The woman stroked the photograph in a black frame and whispered through her tears, "My love, my dear, how did it happen? Why are you in heaven now, and I am here on earth suffering without you? We are going to have a baby soon. What should I tell our baby? Where's Daddy? You have no idea how hard it is for me without you, how unbearable, how lonely. I hate those bastards who took your life, who took away my most precious person. Everything is falling apart. I wish I had someone to talk to, a family member or a friend, but I have no one. You dreamed of finding your brother for so long, but it never happened." A cold rain began to drip. It was freezing, but Hilary stood still for a long time and talked to her dead husband as if he were alive. She felt a little better that way, having said all that was on her mind. She got into her car and drove home to their mansion, which felt so empty without Benjamin. Almost everything here reminded her of her beloved. His big cup with funny red hearts, which Hilary had given him for Valentine's Day, was still standing in the kitchen. Expensive suits and shirts were still hanging in the closet, and his razor was still in the bathroom. The grief-stricken widow couldn't force herself to put it all away. She still couldn't believe that Benjamin would never come home again and hug her or whisper to her as he always did, "Hello, my darling, I missed you so much." Hilary took a shower and leaned back tiredly in the huge, soft armchair. She didn't want to eat, as well as to live. Only the thought of the baby growing in her belly forced her to get out of bed in the morning and live her life. The woman closed her eyes and thought back on her life before meeting her husband. Hilary was an ordinary seamstress, and after graduation, she worked in one of the A.L. Hayes as an assistant. Hilary's parents died when she was only 3, and she was raised by her elderly grandmother, Lucy. Lucy was very compassionate and loved her granddaughter more than life. They lived very modestly. Her grandmother's pension was only enough to survive, not to live in a normal way. Since she was a child, she understood how difficult it was for her grandmother, so she tried to make her happy, studied well, was not capricious, and never asked for anything, even though sometimes she wanted something. That's why, when she was a teenager, Hilary learned how to sew clothes and began changing used clothes given to her by friends and neighbors to fit her size. Moreover, she was able to do it in such a way that an out-of-fashion sweater turned out no worse than a new one. Her grandmother's old sewing machine was very helpful. Sooner or later, classmates began to ask her to sew some clothes for them, to shorten them, to make them more unusual and fashionable. Everyone was happy. Hilary got some pocket money, and her classmates got what they wanted. She also made beautiful handmade hairpins and bracelets and sold them to her classmates for a modest price. Her grandmother, noticing her passion and ability to see you in her creative mind, advised the girl to learn to be a professional seamstress. She used to say, "It's a good skill, you'll always have enough money, and you'll be able to find a job anywhere." At the atelier, she met Benjamin. He was just arguing with her instructor. "Lady, I asked you to shorten my pants by only an inch. What have you done? It's horrible. I look like a clown. I was going to wear them to a conference, and now what? I'm very upset. My friends recommended your atelier as one of the best." Hilary blushed and mumbled, "I'm sorry, this is the first time this has ever happened to me. I must have gotten something mixed up. I'm so sorry." And then Hilary suddenly decided to save her friend. "Please wait, don't yell. I agree these pants can't be saved, but if you want, I can make new ones for you in a couple of days, free of charge." The stranger grinned and looked condescendingly at Hilary. "Miss, I have enough money to go and buy pants in any store, but that's not the point. Those were my favorites. I bought them in another country. Oh, and the conference size, the day after tomorrow, so you won't have time." Hilary held out a skinny arm to him with a smile. "How about we make a bet? If I make it in time, and you like it, we'll forget about this unpleasant incident. And if not, I'll fulfill your every wish." The man suddenly laughed. "You're brave, lady. You have definitely made my mood better." "Well, deal. I'm sure I won't like it. I have exquisite taste, and there's not much time left. So what time should I come tomorrow to pick up my new pants?" Hilary answered confidently, 6 o'clock, but first, I need to know your exact size and tell me what kind of pants you want. "Good," the visitor replied. After the scandalous visitor left, her instructor looked at her in shock. "Oh, come on, Hilary, do you even know who that guy is? They say he owns several banks in the city. Why did you get involved? You're not gonna make it. We'll only disgrace ourselves even more." But Hilary replied, "I'll make it. Just leave me the key. I'll stay at the atelier tonight. I'm even curious to see what I can do." The next day at 6 o'clock, Benjamin arrived at the atelier. He really wanted to put that cheeky girl in her place. No one dared to talk to him like that. He was just sure that there were no pants yet, but Hilary surprised him. She handed him his pants in a neat paper bag, smiled sweetly, and said, "Good afternoon, everything is finished as I promised. Please follow me to the fitting room. I worked very hard." The visitors spent a long time in the fitting room. Hilary was very nervous, and Helen was already starting to panic, thinking that now there was going to be another scandal. But the man came out and replied in surprise, "I have to admit that I lost the bet. The pants really fit perfectly, they are so comfortable, and the fabric is so good. I'm satisfied, I take my words back. Now, I'm your customer, you really surprised me. What's the young talent's name?" The girl blushed and quietly replied, "I'm Hilary, I'm new to the atelier. I'm very glad that you liked it, it's a good experience for me." The man couldn't resist, "My name is Benjamin, I'm a businessman. Hilary, would you allow me to invite you to dinner? I'd like to get to know such a talented girl better. You've charmed me, you are both smart and beautiful, thinking outside the box, a rare combination in a girl." Hilary was speechless at such words. She really liked this self-confident rich client. Her heart beat harder when he looked at her so intently, and her legs were shaking. She timidly replied, "I will be happy to talk to you, Benjamin." "I agree, but can we go somewhere else, not to the restaurant? I'm just a simple girl from the countryside. I've never been to a restaurant. Let's take a walk along the waterfront. It's so beautiful there." The businessman splashed his hands. "You've surprised me again. No one has ever invited me to the waterfront. It's interesting. I accept the invitation. Tell me your address. I'll pick you up tomorrow at 8 o'clock. Hilary was very excited because it was her first date ever. Benjamin was not an ordinary guy. He obviously knew his worth. How should she act? What should she say? She was afraid to embarrass herself. At first, she wanted to wear her most beautiful dress and high heels, but then changed her mind, deciding that it was not the most appropriate clothes for a walk. She decided to wear a casual summer suit and comfortable sneakers with a minimum of makeup. But all her fears were in vain. Benjamin behaved in a simple and relaxed way. He also came in jeans and a sweatshirt and looked like an ordinary guy. They had a wonderful time, took a long walk, talked about life, and then had coffee and delicious vanilla ice cream in a typical street cafe. After 3 hours, it seemed to Hilary that they had known each other for years. They felt so comfortable together. Saying goodbye, Benjamin kissed her hand gallantly and looked intently into her eyes, and she felt like a fire was burning inside her again. He quietly said, "Hilary, I feel so good and comfortable with you. I like you very much. I would like to see you again. Do you mind being my fiancé? I've never met anyone like you before. Other girls are all the same, greedy and boring, artificial lips, empty gazes, and no brain at all. They're lazy, they only know how to beg for insanely expensive gifts. You're different, you're real, you have such a natural, sincere charisma, you've conquered me, you don't know how wonderful you are. The girl blushed and quietly replied, "I like you very much too, Benjamin. I even think I fell in love back then at the atelier, the way you looked at me. I thought I would die, and my heart would stop. I was so worried that you might get cocky because we're so different. I mean, you're a rich businessman, and I'm just a simple seamstress. What if your relatives don't like me? I only care about the personality, not about money, you know. Besides, my parents have already passed away, unfortunately, so I'm my own boss, and I don't care about other people's opinions. So, don't even think about such nonsense. I'll miss you very much, and I will wait for our next meeting." Thus began the relationship. Benjamin was gentle and caring, treated Hilary well, gave her expensive gifts and flowers, and confessed his love. Hilary was thrilled with her fiancé too because he was just a prince from her dreams. When he was holding her in his arms, everything inside her trembled. They've already started planning the wedding. All Hilary's friends envied her openly. They thought that this simple girl had pulled a lucky ticket and was marrying a rich man, just like a princess from a fairy tale. Soon, the couple got married. Benjamin organized a lavish wedding at an expensive restaurant. For Hilary, it was like a beautiful fairy tale. Her husband persuaded her to quit her job at the atelier and become a housewife because his income was enough for everything. Hilary was not used to idle life and began to remodel their family home to her own taste. It turned out amazing. The couple lived in harmony and never quarreled. However, there was one disappointing problem. The woman could not get pregnant, although she was absolutely healthy. They both wanted children. Without children, their family seemed incomplete. Benjamin tried not to aggravate the situation, so he agreed to all the examinations, but nothing worked. It was very depressing for Hilary. She felt defective and blamed only herself for everything. This year, they decided to go to a resort by the sea. They had a wonderful vacation. In the evenings, they danced to cheerful music right on the beach, and at night, they loved each other passionately. And when they came home, a real miracle happened. Hilary finally got pregnant. Benjamin twirled her around in his arms and kissed her, and he couldn't believe that soon he would become a father, and little feet would be running around their house. On that fateful day, everything went wrong from the very morning. Hilary knocked over a cup of coffee on her husband's new jacket. She had to iron the new suit in a hurry, and during breakfast, a huge mirror suddenly fell from the wall and shattered to pieces. Hilary jumped up and wailed, "What on earth is this? It's bad luck. Grandma Lucy said it was a sign of death." "What a stupid day, Benjamin, I'm scared. Be careful, please." The husband laughed and kissed his wife tenderly, pressed her to him, and did not let go for a long time. "Silly girl, don't talk nonsense." "Well, the mirror broke. Apparently, the mount loosened." "That's it. Don't think about such nonsense. What could happen to me? Okay, I have to go to work. It's time." He kissed her again. "Go to the store, do some shopping, relax." All day, Hilary was not herself. She called her husband several times to make sure everything was okay, and still, it was heavy on her heart. She prepared a delicious dinner and waited for her husband, who should have returned soon. But it was getting dark, and her husband still hadn't come back. Hilary began to dial his number, but the phone was unavailable. And then the police called her and told her the terrible news. Benjamin had been shot, apparently by competitors. The man died on the spot. Everything was covered in blood. Hilary screamed so wildly that the janitor and the gardener came running to bring her to her senses. When she arrived at the morgue to identify the body, she fainted 3 times. It seemed like a bad dream, a nightmare. She tried to wake up, but her brain refused to accept the death of her husband. Everything was like a delirium, funeral, crying, grief at the cemetery. Everyone sympathized with her, but she looked through the crowd and realized that all these people were strangers to her. No one fully understood her grief as her soul was torn to shreds, and a baby was growing under her heart who would never have a daddy. After the death of her beloved husband, everything had been turned upside down. Her husband's business was falling apart. Competitors were literally tearing it apart. Hilary didn't know anything about it and didn't know how to lead it. Her husband's deputy turned out to be a cunning man and was not going to help the inexperienced widow at all. On the contrary, he did everything to make the banks go bankrupt and then immediately bought them for an insignificant amount of money. He told her, "Hilary, dear, sell everything before it's too late. Business doesn't tolerate female management. It's fierce competition. Why do you need it all? You're pregnant. Think of the baby. Don't make life harder for yourself. I've found a buyer. The deal is favorable, and you'll get a good sum of money." The woman trusted him and signed all the papers, but only later realized that she sold her husband's business for almost nothing. She cried from hopelessness, blamed herself, and tried to get out of this situation, but realized that she could not cope with anything. 4 months later, it became clear that the woman had no money left at all. Soon, she would simply have no money for living, childbirth, and raising a baby. She counted the money that was left in Benjamin's safe, and she was getting scared. Childbirth was coming. She had to buy everything for the baby. The mansion also required expenses. The janitor and gardener had to be paid, and the utilities had to be paid. Where would she get the money for all this? And now, after visiting her husband's grave, she thought back to the story of his brother and regretted that Benjamin had never been able to find him. At least there would have been someone close to her. Benjamin was older than his brother Brian, so he took care of him and loved him from his early childhood. Brian was weak, was often sick, and was afraid of everything. He always tried to hide behind his big brother. It often happens in families that the older child doesn't accept the younger one or is jealous that they get less attention. Now, but for some reason, Benjamin loved this baby right away when they brought him home from the hospital. Brian smiled at his brother with his toothless mouth and stretched his little arms toward him. Benjamin gladly helped his mother to babysit his little brother, feed him, and change his diaper. Their parents liked extreme sports from their youth. They loved to go to the mountains. It was not just a hobby but the meaning of their lives. After the boys were born, they didn't stop traveling. Their parents asked an elderly neighbor to babysit the kids. That sweet elderly lady had no children, so she was happy to take care of the boys. But their neighbor couldn't understand how their parents could leave the boys at home and go away for a long time, moreover risking their lives, without thinking about the future of their children. After all, extreme mountain climbing was very dangerous. She only marveled at how friendly the kids were. They were together always and everywhere. That's what Benjamin became independent early. At the age of 10, he could cook a meal and took his brother to kindergarten himself. Didn't forget to feed him and taught him everything he knew himself. The boys considered the neighbor their own grandmother and got used to her. She was kind and never scolded them for their pranks, although, of course, they loved their parents very much. Every time they waited for them from the next trip and then listened about the adventures of Dad and Mom. They saw photos of their parents capturing the stunning beauty of nature in the mountains and marveled at their courage. Benjamin also dreamed of climbing the world's highest peak when he grew up, but Brian was afraid. He was a very calm and shy boy. One day, something that the old woman feared most of all happened. She was babysitting the boys, but their parents never came back. Usually, the trip never lasted longer than a week, but there was a second, a third week, and they still hadn't come back. The money they had left for food and living expenses was running out, and the boys were also missing them and kept asking when their mom and dad would come back. The frightened woman realized that something was wrong and involved the police. It turned out that their entire hiking group had been hit by an avalanche, and no one had survived that fateful hike. So, 10-year-old Benjamin and 5-year-old Brian were left orphans. The neighbor was shocked. The kids were hysterical. Benjamin instantly matured. He held his brother in his arms and comforted him while Brian cried nonstop. She felt so sorry for the children that she even wanted to take custody of the boys, but she was too old. The social services didn't let her, so the children were sent to the orphanage. Her husband told her that he and his brother were terrified of the orphanage, thinking it was like a prison, and were very concerned about surviving there. But in reality, life in the orphanage was not as horrible as it is often described. No one abused or beat the children, they were well fed, and on holidays, they even gave them chocolates and sweets. Benjamin became even more protective of little Brian, gave him all his sweets, helped him in his studies, and didn't let anyone hurt his brother. He always tried to support Brian, who was weaker in spirit and often cried at night, covering his head with a blanket. Life in the orphanage was slow and peaceful, and most of the children had the illusion that it would always be like that. But sometimes there were days when the little orphans perked up and caught every glance of the orphanage principal with hope. The orphans knew that if the principal appeared in the hallway, some of them had a chance for an incredible change, some were lucky enough to be adopted. The boys were sure that both of them would be adopted. They missed the comfort and warmth of home. The cold gray walls of the orphanage felt like pressure, depressing them, and often they just wanted to cry. One day, two married couples came to their orphanage. One couple was very wealthy. They were well-known entrepreneurs. They already owned commercial banks. The couple could not have children, and they never considered surrogacy. Marie and Peter decided to find an heir in the orphanage, long and meticulously studied the personal files of the children so that the child would be healthy and with good heredity. Then the principal showed them Benjamin's and Brian's personal files, told them about their parents' tragic deaths, praised them, and kept hinting that they should not separate the brothers. The children would suffer from separation, missing each other. It is not common to separate brothers and sisters. It is such a trauma for the children. The rich people looked closely at both brothers, thought for a long time, and patiently listened to the principal, but still decided to adopt only one child, Benjamin. They refused to adopt both kids, thinking that they were already 40 years old, and they might not have time to bring up little Brian. Brian was adopted by an ordinary family of two teachers. The couple lived modestly, but still had a good chance of being approved for adoption, as they had their own house and a good car. When Benjamin realized that he and his brother were being separated and would live in different families, he became hysterical, grabbed Brian, and even wanted to escape with him. He couldn't bear the idea that he would never see his brother again. When the boys ran away, they were quickly found and brought to the principal's office. She didn't scold them, understanding perfectly well what forced them to do that, and explained simple things to them patiently. Benjamin, you're a clever boy, listen to me. You and your brother are good kids. It's going to be very hard for you here in the orphanage. Think about it, what's going to happen to you? There will be no one to help you, no one to support you. I've worked here for many years, and I can tell you that very few orphans who were not adopted were able to achieve success on their own. Now you have a chance to get into good families, albeit different ones. You are very lucky. You will go to a normal school like everyone else and grow up in love and care. Each of you will have a dad and a mom like everyone else. I understand that you love each other and don't want to be apart, but that doesn't mean you will never see each other again. I will try to talk to your fostered parents from both families so they will allow you to communicate and be friends in the future. It seems bad and unfair to you now, but when you grow up, you'll thank me for your happy childhood. Both brothers sighed and nodded their heads. The goodbye was tearful, and they could barely tear the brothers away from each other. Benjamin whispered to Brian, "Brother, I'll find you. I won't leave you. Trust me and wait for me. Obey your new dad and mom. They are good." So, the brothers were separated, not for a while, but for their whole lives. Benjamin was growing in wealth and had the best of everything. His parents loved him and bought him expensive stuff. His father gave him his last name and was very proud of his son. His new parents never called him adopted. They never scolded him. His mother experienced his childhood sorrows and joys together with him, and his father taught him manly wisdom. On weekends, they often went fishing and riding on a motorboat. There was always only trust between them. Benjamin sincerely loved his foster parents, and they loved him too. The boy graduated from a prestigious university and became an economist, so he easily became the head of his father's empire. His parents adopted him when they were already 40, so they passed away early, and Benjamin ran the banks alone. He had always loved his foster parents and was eternally grateful to them for a happy childhood, love, and care. He felt that he was loved, that he was not a stranger in this family. But all these years, Benjamin could not stop thinking about his lost brother. He repeatedly asked his parents to find the address or names of the family that adopted Brian, but his father and mother only shrugged their shoulders. After all these years, how could they remember? And then he'd met Hilary, and they got married. Hilary remembered that her husband had been trying to find his brother all the time. He kept their last photo together from the orphanage. The businessman hired private investigators and involved various organizations, but everything was in vain. The head of the orphanage where they grew up died long ago, and all the papers were ruined in a fire. Benjamin couldn't remember the last name of the couple who adopted Brian. He was worried about his brother, and he felt guilty that they had been separated. After all, he lived in luxury, and it was still unknown how Brian's fate had turned out. Hilary understood her spouse's worries, tried to support him in everything, and also wanted them to find each other and finally meet. And now, after her husband's death, Hilary often thought of the story and regretted that there were no close people to support her. After crying all night, Hilary woke up in a terrible condition. Her whole body ached, and she felt nauseous. She frantically wondered where she could get money for a living. The woman began to rummage through Benjamin's belongings, not knowing why, probably out of desperation. Suddenly, she found her husband's debt book. He often lent money to his acquaintances out of his own funds, quickly and at a high interest rate if their credit history didn't allow them to get a loan from a bank. This made good profits, although often such troubled clients delayed repayment. His deputy interacted directly with the clients, lent money. Benjamin only wrote down their names and addresses. Out of desperation, Hilary took the debt book and began to read it. There were 4 debtors who were 3 months overdue, and her husband had even put special marks next to their names. The woman decided that this was her last chance and went to ask the debtors to return the money. She honestly told about the difficult situation she was in and hoped for understanding. But 2 people promised her that they would try to return the money as soon as possible, and the third did not even open the door. But there was one last address. The woman went to the next debtor without much expectation. The house was old and shabby. It was obvious that some poor people lived there. Hilary felt embarrassed because, in fact, she came there to take their last money. An unshaven middle-aged man opened the door. He was poorly dressed and not very well groomed. Something in his face seemed familiar to her. "Good afternoon. Are you Brian?" The man frowned and looked at his guest, and happily said, "Hi, yes, but if you're from the insurance agency, I'm not interested." "No, I came here for a different reason. I'm Benjamin's wife. You owe him a large sum of money. Here it's all recorded in his debt book, and there's your signature. Please check it, I'm not lying." "I see. Come in and sit down at the table." Hilary exhaled and began the unpleasant conversation. "You know, my husband died, his business is ruined, and I'm completely broke and pregnant. I beg you to return at least some of the money. Soon I will have nothing to live on. Please try to understand my situation." The man turned red and coughed. He felt unbearably sorry for this exhausted young woman in a black scarf. Grief lurked in her huge blue eyes. He sighed heavily. "Yes, that's right. I was released from jail not so long ago, and I wanted to start a new life, start my own business. So, I borrowed money. You know, I have a criminal record and no job, so a bank would never give me money. But the thing is that I just bought equipment and premises. I want to start a company to sell ventilation systems. Before jail, I was the head of the gas service company, and I know a lot about it. So, I don't have this money now. It is invested in the business, and I don't know when I will get the first income. But I understand you perfectly well, and I'm sorry for your loss. Your husband was a great man. I've heard a lot about him, although I didn't know him in person. He helped me out a lot when others refused my request. His deputy gave me the money. So, I will definitely repay the debt as agreed. Please don't doubt it. I will give the money back, but later. Stay strong, don't give up. I'm sorry for what happened. I'm really sorry. Hilary became upset. She looked intently at the man and suddenly asked, "Your face seemed so familiar to me. Haven't we met before?" "Probably not." The man shook his head. "I think you're just mistaken. It happens. I definitely haven't met you before. I'm sorry again that I can't give you your money back right now." Hilary was about to get up and leave when she saw a photo on the wall, the same photo as her late husband had. A photo of Benjamin and his little brother at the orphanage. She couldn't believe it and almost screamed, "My God, where did you get that photo? That boy is my late husband. The other one is his brother, Brian. My husband has spent his whole life trying to find his brother. Tell me, did you know Brian? Can you tell me how to find him? I really need to find him." The man's face changed and turned pale. He whispered, "I am Brian, and Benjamin is my brother. We were separated at the orphanage years ago, and I never saw him again. So it turns out you're his wife. I can't believe it. What a twist. So Benjamin died. He's no longer alive. I can't believe it. Do I owe my own brother money? I can't make sense of it all." The shock hit Hilary. She wept, tears streaming down her cheeks. That's why her face seemed familiar. You and Benjamin look a lot alike, the same eyes and eyebrows as Benjamin. I can't even believe it. Tell me, how did your fate turn out? My husband has been looking for you for so long. He's been looking everywhere, but all in vain. Brian sighed heavily and began to tell the story. "I don't remember the death of my parents very well. I was just a child. But I remember my brother very well. He always loved me and protected me. To be honest, I wouldn't have survived in the orphanage without him. Benjamin and I dreamed that the two of us would be adopted by a family, but we never expected that we would be separated for a lifetime, so it was a big shock to me to be separated from him. I was adopted by a family of teachers. They lived modestly, like everyone else. They didn't abuse me, but I never became a real family member for my foster parents. As soon as I grew up, my parents hinted that it was time to become independent and leave the house. They made it clear that they would not support me any further. I always felt like a loner inside and never forgot about Benjamin for a minute. I hoped he would find me, as he had promised. No one understood or loved the way my brother did. I entered the university and graduated with honors, though it wasn't easy. Then I got a job, skyrocketed up the career ladder, and became a boss. I purchased a good apartment downtown. Soon I fell in love. I met my fiancée in a restaurant. She was there with a friend, Sophie. Struck me in the heart, bright, gorgeous, confident brunette. We just couldn't keep our eyes off each other. I had the most serious intentions, and we got married. I loved her madly. She was like an obsession for me. Colleagues told me that she was not serious, that she was greedy, but I didn't listen to anyone. I thought it was all just people's gossip. I dreamed that soon we would have a baby and will live happily ever after. But after the wedding, it turned out that my wife didn't want to do anything. She only wasted my money. And Sophie didn't want to hear anything about children. So we began to quarrel a lot. I was very tired at work. I wanted peace and comfort at home, and I wanted tenderness from my wife. But every day when I came home, I only saw a total mess and no dinner. Moreover, My wife began to go somewhere at night more and more often. She said she just wanted to hang out with her friends or get some fresh air or anything else. It was strange and suspicious. We lost the spark of passion between us, and all that was left was bitterness of disappointment. It was all driving me crazy. I didn't know how to fix my relationship with Sophie. I was very worried because, despite everything, I still loved her and believed that everything could be fixed. And my success at work bothered a lot of jealous people. There was a total disagreement in our team, and this also made me very upset. I felt that it would never end. Much later, I learned that all this time my wife cheated on me with my deputy. That's why she started going somewhere at night. Just at this time, my foster mom became very ill. She urgently needed a very expensive surgery. The situation was critical. The doctor said that we could not delay, and the price was insane. Although our relationship was not perfect, she was my mom. She raised me and gave me everything I needed. So, I had to help her. I feverishly tried to think where to get such a sum of money. I went to different banks. I wanted to sell my apartment, but it all needed time, and we needed the money urgently. I trusted Tyler. He was my assistant, and he was the one who talked me into the illegal deal. It had to bring me a lot of money, and it would solve all my problems in no time. I sincerely wanted to help my mother. I took a risk and made a deal with my conscience. So, I signed the contracts he slipped me, and then the auditors showed up and revealed huge losses and machinations. They tricked me, and I didn't get a single dollar. Moreover, my mother died soon after, without waiting for the surgery, and my father was so mad at me that we stopped communicating. That's how I ended up in jail for years. It all happened so fast. While I was in jail, Sophie divorced me and took my apartment. When I was released, I was completely lost. I didn't know how and where to live or where to start. I tried to ask my foster father for help, but he sharply replied that he didn't want to know anything about me anymore. I was completely desperate. I kept thinking, why am I living? For whom? Nobody needs me. My wife betrayed me, my father abandoned me, and my mother died. It was like a vicious circle. I began to drink alcohol often. I saw absolutely no way out. It's a terrible state when in the morning, you don't want to wake up and open your eyes. I do not wish this to anyone. My old friend unexpectedly helped me. He gave me this old house, so I live here now. Once he lost his whole family too. He was the one who saved me. He persuaded me to try to start my life from scratch. Hilary, I'm so glad we met. You're not a stranger to me, and you're carrying my nephew under your heart. And now I have someone to live for. I promise you I will not abandon you, will not leave you in a difficult moment. I've been through a lot myself, and I can imagine how difficult it is for you now. I know how your soul hurts, but don't give up. Together we will cope with everything. Can we go to my brother's grave right now, please? Hilary nodded silently, wiped her tears, and they drove to the cemetery. They cried near the grave for a long time. The man whispered, looking at Benjamin's photo, "Brother Benjamin, we have finally found each other. I can't believe you're gone. It's so unfair. I dreamed so much that you would find me, that we would hug like we used to and never part again. Life has almost broken me, brother. I was about to give up. But today I met your wife, Hilary, and found out I'm going to be an uncle, and I finally found out what happened to you. It's so unfair to die at such a young age. Why were you killed? Why? You know, brother, I've always remembered your embrace, the warmth of your arms. No one has ever understood me like you did. You've always been my hero. You were the best. You were my only hope. I swear that I will not leave your family. I will help them in everything so that you will become there in heaven. Now I have someone to live for. I may not be as strong and brave as you, but I will try not to let you down. For the sake of all of us, I will become a real man again. Your wife and child will never know grief and need again. Hilary also mentally thanked fate for she had prayed so much. She wished to find at least one kindred soul in this world, and so it happened. She whispered, "Benjamin, my love, today is a special, important day in my life. I have been praying frantically and searching for a way out, but I have never found it, and today fate itself has led me to your brother. I think you are happy that your brother is alive and well. You wanted so much to see him, to hug him. If you don't mind, I'll do it for you." Brian and Hilary hugged each other. It made them feel better, at least for a while. The man whispered softly to her, "Don't cry, Hilary, we'll get through this. Everything will be okay, you just have to believe it." Having said goodbye to Benjamin, they got into the car. Hilary suddenly said, "Brian, why don't you move in with me? The mansion is huge, I can't stay there by myself now. You wouldn't bother me at all. What are you going to do in a strange old house now? I need support more than ever, and I need someone close to me. Please don't leave me alone." The man took her hand. "Of course, Hilary, I promised I'd be there for you. I'll pack all my belongings today and move in tomorrow. In order to have enough money to live on, you and I will think it over, open a business, and run it together. I hope the business will go well, and neither you nor my nephew will be in need of anything. I'll do my best to make it happen. I won't take any more risks. I have no right to let us all down." From that day on, the young widow's life began to get better, little by little. Brian was by her side, developing his pipe and heating system repair company. The man had a lot of experience and management in this field. Hilary gave him the rest of her husband's savings without hesitation for business development, and things started to get better. Hilary did not remain idle either. She remembered how she used to love sewing and began to work from home. While working, bad thoughts went away, and time went faster. Besides, the income was not bad. But most importantly, she had peace of mind because now there was a man who cared about her life, her sorrows, her problems. She saw how much Brian tried to take care of her. Every evening he brought fresh fruit, bought vitamins, and drove her to the doctor. And when Hilary's water broke in the middle of the night, she was confused and started screaming, "I think I'm going into labor. What should I do? It's too early." Brian instantly realized what was happening and decided not to wait for an ambulance. He drove Hilary to the hospital himself. On the way, he cheered her up as best he could. He was waiting in the corridor until he was informed that Hilary had given birth to a daughter and that both she and the baby were fine. Only then did he exhale a sigh of relief and go home. He was happy to be an uncle to the little princess. The next morning, someone shouted outside the hospital, "Hilary, look out for a minute, please." Other women woke Hilary up. She got up, and Brian was jumping under the window, rejoicing. Men are just like children. Hilary's heart warmed. She smiled and looked out the window, waved to Brian. He shouted, "Thanks for the niece. What name shall we give her? Should I bring you anything? Write a note for me. I'll wait downstairs. I'll buy everything you need." The woman laughed and began writing the list, happy that she would be welcomed home, that she was no longer alone. She whispered, "Benjamin, you have a wonderful brother. He's so protective. He takes care of us. Honey, what are we going to name our daughter?" She used to talk to her late husband mentally and ask for advice, believing he could hear her. That night she had a wonderful dream. Benjamin was stroking their little girl asleep in her crib and whispering, "My dear Hope, my little sunshine, be happy, my little girl. Daddy will be watching you from heaven." Hilary stood up, looking around. She called out, "Benjamin, my love, where have you gone? Don't go." But there was no one in the room. The woman realized that it was a sign that her husband wanted their daughter to be named Hope. When Hilary was feeding her baby girl, she wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. Here it is, her little happiness, her dearest treasure, but her daddy was not with them. When Brian went to pick up the girls from the hospital, he proudly took Hope in his arms, holding her gently like a crystal vase, seemingly not even breathing. The nurses left congratulations. "Daddy, are you already planning a second child?" The man was a little embarrassed and replied, "Unfortunately, I am not a father to this little princess, I'm her uncle." They arrived at the mansion. Hilary entered the room in a frozen place. Brian had set up a marvelous nursery. Everything was perfect to the last detail: a crib, a table, a lot of toys, and everything necessary for a baby. He said, "How do you like it?" "I tried very hard." "Okay, shall we go to dinner?" The woman cried tears of joy when she saw the table set with love. Hilary had Brian warmly thank him. "You're the best. You take such good care of me. I didn't even expect this. Everything is wonderful." Every week, Hilary and Brian came to Benjamin's grave, told him how his daughter was growing up, and shared their sorrows and joys, believing that he could hear them. That chance meeting really made them a true and strong family, where everyone cared for each other. No one knows how life will work out in the future, but if there is a truly loving person by your side, you can handle everything together. Thank you for joining us today on Deep Stories. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video.